Hello, welcome back to BlindMatrix. It's Matt speaking here, and in this video, I'm going to introduce you to a few ways that you might manage a lead time. There's a couple of tools that you might use. So I'm going to take you through it. Now, the scenarios that I throw might not suit you all. There's going to be quite a lot of variety to this. And some of you may already be using these features. So let's get into it and see where we get to. If you have any questions, you know where I am, but please do leave a comment underneath the video, or if you're reading the blog that links to this, then leave comments there, but please do get engaged. Okay, so I'm on the works in progress at the moment in time. As you probably well know, lead times affect your work in progress. All these jobs that you see on my screen are in various states of delivery. Now, there's a couple of dates inside BlindMatrix that are helpful to give you some kind of management tools. Now, one of the dates that I quite like using is something called date required. It's not the only date, it's one of the dates, but it is one of the significant dates. And let me explain why. This works in progress can be organized in such a way so that the oldest jobs appear at the top of the list and the newest jobs appear at the bottom of the list. So you can see what makes these jobs the newest. Well, we can see if we had the order date on this screen too, we would be able to see that these jobs are indeed the newest. So what I'll do is I'll go and do that very thing. I'll go and add the order date. Oh, it's already in there. There we go. Didn't see that. Here's the order date just here. So we should be able to see at the bottom, look, the order date is the 4th of the 9th, and the date required is the 14th of the 9th. And if you scroll up, you see all these order dates are getting older and older and older. So it stands to reason that the older orders are the ones that you're going to want to deliver the soonest in order to minimize the cost of sale associated to managing that job. So how can we do that? Well, we can use this date required in various ways. It needs to symbolize something for your business. So it can either mean a date at which you get everything ready before you book an appointment, or get everything ready before you plan the delivery, or indeed the date that you expect everything to be finished in production. There's a few different ways that you can use it, but the date required is a useful date to symbolize everything being done before you take the final action, which may be around settling balances or issuing invoices. Now, if you've got an old job like this, now there's no point at all having a date required that is a couple of years out of date. So if this job is actually still active and it's been invoiced, but there's still an outstanding balance, then the idea is that whoever is managing this particular job at this particular point makes some kind of agreement with themselves, with the business, or indeed with the customer on when the next step is required. And what that does is, if I was to say right now that actually I've taken some kind of a step to solve this issue, and that particular step doesn't have to be reviewed until the 30th, perhaps I've already updated the notes, I'll click enter. Now when I come back into, bear in mind this is Ramco Blinds, Rambo Brown, if I click on refresh, the next time I arrive back into the works in progress, that job is no longer at the top of the list. It's at the bottom because from a management perspective, we've managed that job. So here it is. It's third in the list, just sitting around other jobs that have actually been scheduled for one reason or another around that time. So I do hope that's quite a useful concept in itself. Now there's another date called schedule date. I'm just going to add it in here because this also offers you something extra. And using the two dates combined can often be the magic formula for some companies. Many others have a lot more dates than that to work with, of course. So if you go into here, it's actually called schedule date order. Now let's click that and we will move it to... Now, if you move it to before date required or after, it really should have a relationship with the function behind what you're using this for. You know, what the purpose? Why are you using that date? You know, what are you using that date for? Now, it's just another date at the end of the day. It could mean something like to be scheduled into production. It could mean something like to be the time that you expect products to be delivered by an external supplier. It could be the date by which you expect everything to be delivered and ready, and it might just only precede the date required by a couple of days, and the date required might be the ultimate date the customer expects you to deliver the product. So you can use these things in different ways. Now, what's really important about these two is The real purpose of this video is typically in the application settings. What you have is you have a little area which is just here. Default required days, default scheduled days. You can set up defaults. Okay, 10 days for the required days and 0 for the scheduled days. Now, it's important to note at this point that if you turn scheduled days off, then it can't be used. Okay, so it needs to be on in order to be used. Whereas required days, which also translates into due date, is always on. Now, the scheduled days starts from the created date, and the required days starts from the order date. That is how most of you are used to the system working. That is until now. Actually now, we've developed a new feature which gives you far more flexibility. It's actually called, let's go to settings, it's at the bottom here, it's called product delivery days. Now if you click on product delivery days, you see this screen here. It's not totally clear, which is why I'm giving you some instruction on this video. The first thing to look at is just these two options on the left here. Let me just point it out to you. The first things to look at is just these two here. This is essentially just giving you control to decide where, where you are going to derive the date from. So calculate due date, that's also date required, from the created date, the order date, or the invoice date. That's where it normally is set as a default. Calculate scheduled date from the created date, order date, or invoice date. Once again, if over here you click disable, then it turns off scheduled days. That's just because some customers require it that way. So most people, you'd want this enabled, and you'd want to specify calculate due date from the order date and calculate scheduled date. You'll have to make a decision. It depends on what you're using that scheduled date for. But in the scenario I've just given you, we're also going to calculate it from the order date. Now, next working day just simply means that, so if you look at the section down here, these are your days. So let's say, for example, according to my scenario, we want the scheduled date to be the leading date, and we wanted that to be 8, and we wanted the due date to be 10. Okay, both excluding Saturdays and Sundays. And then we click the next working day. The next working day is going to basically be the 11th day and the 9th day. If we do the date entered, it's quite simply the 10th day and the 8th day. Okay, that's how that works. Now, if I click save, when I create a new job and I convert that to an order, the due date is going to be 10 days after the order date. And equally, the scheduled date is going to be 8 days after the order date. And that is, of course, going to affect the way the works in progress is organized, providing it's filtered on date required, okay, as your ultimate date. I think you can also filter on schedule date. Let's just have a quick look. If not, leave us a note if that's something you require. I'm sure we can make that work. You can actually filter by schedule date. So date required is probably the one that you'd want to use in the scenario that I'm describing to you. Okay, now let's pause for a moment. There is a second part to this. If you click on this tab here, this changes things somewhat. This enables you to manage the due date based upon supplier, product, or customer. Quite a complex area. There's going to be further videos on how to manage this in detail, but I'll give you a basic example. If you click add and you want to say that a particular supplier, so let's just call it Lovely Blinds. Lovely Blinds is an external supplier to me, so I'm the company, and an external supplier of mine is Lovely Blinds, and they're going to deliver panel blinds to me. We'd leave customer empty because this is not going to be customer specific. They're going to deliver them to me 5 days. That's the basic lead time management per product. That's very, very, very useful because it means that we can have product specific lead times. Product specific lead times. It's very, very, very helpful. Now, if you wanted to actually set up a schema, you click on the edit button and you can set up a schema in here. It says 5 days, okay, but actually you can start to actually define things a little differently. You can say from Sunday, sort of 10 o'clock. Okay, so if an order comes in or an order is converted between Sunday and 10 o'clock to Sunday and 11 o'clock, then actually in this scenario, because it's a Sunday, it's going to be 6 days. So you can set up some exceptions. Okay, You do have to remember to click on this little due date button down here. Okay, but you can set up some exceptions, which are very useful to do. There are a couple of places where you can review the date, the product lead time date. If you open up the product, you can see a date up here. This is where that date is, and you can use that in conjunction with statuses to help qualify what the date means. That's quite a useful technique. Another place that you might want to look at is on the works in progress. When it says list by order, if you click on the plus box to the bottom left here, this date, this schedule date, it actually is the same date. Another place, you can actually add it to list by product. So if you add the date to list by product, and we scroll down here, you see you've got something called schedule date by product. Okay, if we add that in, open that up, what you'll see now on the right hand side is these are the schedule dates. So you can use these dates to schedule into production. You can use these dates to schedule completion. You can use these dates for all sorts of reasons. So product lead times or product schedule dates, or whatever you want to call it, is a real interesting area to explore within BlindMatrix, and we'll welcome your feedback.